Lauren again. So today I'm going to be talking about communication styles. And the reason this is important is, in friendships, in the business world, with your family, whatever, if your communication is off, you know, communication is key. It's how we get to know each other, it's how we figure out boundaries, it's how we solve our problems. So that's why it's important. Number one. Oh wait, I gotta explain this a little bit, huh? So I'm going to be explaining for unhealthy communication styles that are common. There might be more out there, but these are kind of the, like I said, common ones. And then I'm going to be going down to stars, hearts, smileys, assertive, because this is the goal, what we want to get to. All right. So the first one under unhealthy and unproductive is passive. So passive people, when they go into a conversation, and it's important to note first of all that they really don't like confrontation, um, and that kind of thing. They have trouble communicating boundaries. So when they're going into a conversation, um, maybe where there's conflict, or they need to express a boundary because they're uncomfortable or whatever, their body language with most of them. Obviously, the symptoms that I'm pointing out, they're not. It's not like a blanket thing. We're not robots. Um, Hopefully, because there's some theories out there like, what if I'm just like the only human? And okay, we'll get into that later. Not in this video though. So, obviously everyone's symptoms are different. So, when they're like I was saying, if they're, boundaries, conflict, their body language, they might be kind of trying to like protect themselves. At least that's what, this has been said to look like, or, that's the thought process. Some psychologists have said, just kind of like low volume in their voice. Let's say somebody is upsetting me. Let's say someone said something rude to me and I feel judged or whatever. I might just be like, oh, so, like, this is the other day when, and it could be very, very hard for them to get it out. Um, you know, like I said, tone, voice, everything's very low. I think it's sort of, I want to apologize if I'm not doing it justice, because for me, I'm a very loud talker, just in general. So, but yeah, so it's really, really hard for them. It can be hard to express boundaries. They often will feel the need to please others. They just, um, and there's a lot of reasons that people can people please. It could be because they're afraid of abandonment. There's maybe trauma in their past, and so their defense mechanism, they just learn, hey, if I just please you, then you'll like me, you'll be nice to me, um, or whatever, whatever. And so, a big problem with this is people will not respect them. Some people, because they could view them as, oh, well, they're not good at boundaries, so I'm just gonna, there's people out there that are fucked up in that way. And so it kind of, passive communication can sometimes leave you open to abuse or people taking advantage of you. And then I'm sure with like other people who are interacting with a passive communicator, they might, feel bad for them, or like if they were to find out, like maybe at first, because there's not communication, the passive communicator wants to avoid conflict, maybe they don't even know about the person's boundaries, so that's another problem with passive communication. It's like, it's really hard because they're struggling with it, but at the same time, it's like putting the expectation on someone else to know your needs. You know, it's tough. It's a really, really tough situation. Um, but yeah, I mean, you know, they also, you know, can avoid compliments or feel really, really uncomfortable if someone compliments them. You know, it's like, oh hey, you're really smart. Oh hey, I like what you said, and then you know maybe they deflect with a joke. Maybe they, you know, just switch the subject, whatever, whatever. For me, I mean, I love compliments. You know, I'm gonna say thank you and you know whatever, whatever. But a passive communicator, it can be really, really painful for them. And, you know, that's something that I personally, I'm very empathetic towards that, you know. Um, but like I said, some people may not understand that, et cetera, et cetera. So that's passive communication, and I just want to just say it in the beginning of the video so there's no like confusion. So I am going to put like ways that you can change your communication style, but because essentially the answer to all of these unhealthy styles is we're going to try and change them to assertive. So when I come down to assertive, then I'm going to go through that way. Okay. So the next one is passive aggressive. And that was just an example of what I just did with the eye roll, the little, you know, like staying quiet, but then trying to get your point out and like you know, you're kind of being like pissy, you know. But essentially, with a passive aggressive person, they can have a lot of resentment, you know, probably because they feel like they can't just fully express their needs. And maybe also because it's just been going on for so long. But, you know, if they're mad at someone, if they want to express a boundary, it's just kind of like, you know, like one time I was in a group and I don't know, I guess I said something. I'm not exactly sure what the issue was because it wasn't communicated, but this girl, like, she just looked at me like that. And so, like I said, it's difficult for the receiver because it's like, all right, why don't you just tell me what I did so I can either apologize or I can either, you know, so I can figure out what to do with that. Um, you know, it's hard, but it's like the passive aggressive communicator, that's what they know. And who knows, like it could be the way that they were socialized. I know that girls and boys are socialized differently. For instance, like with guys, and there are studies about this. This isn't, you know, trying to be sexist. It's nothing like that. These are the studies. This is unfortunately the way that people are socialized, and maybe the socialization, the way that people are socialized, maybe that is sexist. And but you know, anyway. So with boys, it's kind of like, you know, there's an argument, there's a fight. It's like, just punch them, have the fight, and then the next day, oh hey bro, what's up? But with women, you know, I've noticed and I've seen this. There's things like, you know, kind of complaining, like either under your breath or, and you know, and I've seen it with guys sometimes too. It's not, you know, it's not all women, it's not all men. It's just higher percentages of them. It's more general. Um, but you know, also gossip. It's really, really big with girls. And for me, oh my God, like that's actually a huge boundary for me. Like anybody, if I first meet them and they're talking about someone else, I'm not going to open up to that person. I'm not, no. And I'm not going to want to get close to them at all. I mean, that's essentially just, no, it's a red flag, deal breaker. And it can be that way for a lot of people. So it's like the passive aggressive communicator, they maybe are using that to kind of connect with people in addition to get back at whoever they're upset with. But it could just leave you with fewer friends. And it never solves the problem. It just pisses off the person that you're gossiping about or hurts them. It really hurts them. So it's hard. But they can also be sulky. Um, you know, they can talk with like a really sweet, innocent voice, like, oh hi, but like, I didn't, or like little fake voice or whatever, whatever. And it's like, I'm sure a passive aggressive person can be very irritating to be around for some people. It's like, Jesus Christ. It's like, I know you're like fucking with me and you're doing it. And, but it's hard for them. It's learned behavior, ingrained. Possibly there's genetic factors that make someone more likely to be that way. I don't know. But yeah, it's a lot. It's just indirect communication, sarcasm, and I don't think all sarcasm is passive aggressive. Sometimes someone just that's their sense of humor, but who knows? Maybe it's their sense of humor because that's the only way that they know how to communicate their needs. Who knows? But yeah, so these are just kind of examples, and it's also said that like people who use passive aggressive communication styles, they can be doing it because they feel a sense of powerlessness. They feel like they can't communicate that boundary. They feel, so maybe that's going back to trauma. Maybe they felt powerless at one point, and if they expressed a boundary, they were shunned or shamed or whatever. Um, so like I said, it's sad. It's sad all around because if you're communicating that way, it's going to get a lot of people upset with you. Like, I had a therapist one time actually where she would communicate passive aggressively. And it's like, oh my God, we're in therapy. Aren't you supposed to be like showing clients good communication skills? Like, I don't know. But, it was upsetting. And I told her, after a couple times, I told her, I said, please stop. Please communicate to me assertively. Tell me what's going on, and we can move forward. And that's how I interact and how I, handle passive aggressive people. Honestly, it's like the first time that you show that to me, and I will whatever. I'm just gonna jump in there. What's going on? So yeah. Anyway, we're gonna now move on to aggressive. Um, so for aggressive, these people tend to focus solely on their needs. Like in a conversation, let's say we're trying to do conflict resolution. There's, for instance, let's say you're discussing with your roommates rent. And so you go into the conversation and you say, if you don't effing pay me or put in this amount of money, I'm going to kick you out. I'll go to court, get out. There's no collaboration. There's no trying to listen to the other person's side so you can reach a better solution rather than just going to court, which doesn't solve anything. But they can be very hostile. Their body language can be very like, they can maybe just possibly it could even escalate to violence. I don't know. I mean, I think maybe with anything, all communication styles, maybe it could escalate if people are getting crazy. Who knows? But yeah, so it's obviously not really beneficial. I mean, what I get concerned about is, okay, what if an aggressive person is interacting with a passive person? The passive person is going to be people pleasing. The aggressor is going to only care about their side, and so this person is taken advantage of, and the aggressive communication style is then reinforced because it gets the person what they want. Or even maybe with passive aggressive, oh my God, can you imagine that? Like, no, and I'm gonna do this, and the passive aggressive person is like, yeah, go ahead and do that, and I'm gonna gossip about you. Who knows? Um, so yeah, it can be very frustrating to people. Maybe people who have healthier communication styles. I mean, even them when they interact with an aggressive person. I mean, it's going to be upsetting, and they're only going to be focusing on how hurt they feel, or on how offended they feel, or how disrespected they feel. Like, even if you're not a sensitive person, you're not emotionally sensitive, you're still going to feel disrespected. Like for me, I'm not super sensitive. Just that outside stimuli, it doesn't have a huge effect on me emotionally. But I still feel disrespected, and I still want you to stop because you're not helping anything. And nobody has a right to disrespect anyone. Nobody has a right to disrespect you, period. And you got no right to disrespect someone else. And that whole thing of, oh, you disrespected me, I'll disrespect you right back. I feel like that's kind of, that's sort of a negative one. It could be any of them. Like maybe if a passive person holds it in for too long, then that's how, they kind of like lash out, get back, passive aggressive, maybe they just, stop answering your messages even though we have to handle this. Aggressive person, ooh. Um, so I mean, like I said, all these communication styles, it's really hard because, I mean, the person's been conditioned to be that way. That's not an excuse, though. They can work on it, they can make changes. But it's hard if they're kind of stuck in that and they don't have insight, or they, whatever, just been doing it for so long. So it's also important to have compassion, but not to where you're being so compassionate and empathetic to where you're reinforcing it. You can kind of, just to yourself. Like for me, if I notice that kind of stuff, I feel empathy. And so that is helpful to communicate assertively because you're focusing, okay, wait, I don't want to get into assertive. Anyway, so yeah, like I said, the person who's on the receiving end of an aggressive person, they'll feel defensive. They can feel defensive. Um, so it's hard. Anyway, now we will move on to manipulative. So for manipulative, the traits are, and like I said, it's different for everyone. Calculated, scheming, shrewd, rude. Um, they're really, really, these people, they can have, talent or skills in this particular area of influencing and controlling people. They, when they're expressing something, there's an underlying message. Like when they're speaking, they're also trying to get something that they want. Like, okay, like for me, and this is like, I mean, this is a good example for, for girls and guys to just, people do this, if you didn't know. Um, this guy was texting me and he was essentially propositioning me for sex. He's like, oh, can we do no strings attached? And what he said to me is, my down there part is yours to use any way and any time you want. So essentially, he was like, you can think of it like this. That's how we started. And it's like, okay, so essentially you're trying to convey like this is for me. You're trying to make it sound like it's going to benefit me, when I think the sole purpose of that was to try and get me to have sex with you. So I saw that as manipulative, and obviously I shut that right down. Said, no, that's not what I want in a partner. I just want basic respect. So, that's an example. This can happen when you're at work, whatever, friends, and it's real. I mean, it's really hard in all areas, but it's like family. This can happen. So, and they can even go so far as to do fake tears, make the person feel guilty, like, oh, you hurt me. Like, why? Like, okay, this guy, oh my God. Okay, so I went on a dating site, right? And there's so many scammers out there. So I started chatting with this guy, and he started asking me for Amazon cards because he is in the military and he needs to pay for his phone so that he can talk to me more, whatever. And so I said, no, I'm not comfortable giving you any money. This is shady. I'm shutting this down. And then he was like, I can't believe you would do this to me. It's really obvious that you don't care about me, and you're just in all it. Like, oh my God. And I was like, dude, bye. And I told him, I said, honestly, it's effed up that you're going around scamming people. It's not cool, bro. Like, please, like, grow up, get a job. You don't need to be doing this. And then I blocked. So, and it's really sad because a lot of the times when these people are doing the manipulative style, the other party isn't aware of it, you know, because there's all these little tricks, these mind tricks, maybe they've built up over the years, maybe just their personality is, you know, just kind of, that's natural for them. I don't know, but you know, it can make and there's probably a lot of gaslighting going on. Gaslighting is where you cause the other person to question their reality. You know, like let's say you said something fucked up, the person comes to you and you're just like, I never said that. Like you're hearing things, you're misinterpreting. And sometimes maybe you did misinterpret, but when we're talking about gaslighting, that's what it is. So, you know, I mean, this can get very dangerous, you know. I mean, imagine, I think, and this really makes me upset. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who have fallen for scams because people, they just are so manipulative and they're just so effed up. Um, you know, so, I mean, in all of these communication styles, you know, they don't lead to anything good. These unhealthy ones. You know, maybe if they came out, you know, or they were developed through trauma, when you were going through that trauma and that period of time, maybe it protected you, and maybe it made you feel safe, but it's not helpful and it's not getting you what you want anymore. You know, it's just, you're going to lose friends, you're going to upset people, you're going to scare people. Or you're doing super effed up stuff to people, which is not cool and not okay. So, yeah. All right, now the finale. Assertive. Hearts, smiley, stars. You're going to say it again. So, this communication style, the assertive people, they know their boundaries, they know their limits, they communicate these boundaries and limits. But how they do this is they make sure there's respect and they're also, you know, taking into account the other person's feelings. So for instance, let's use the roommate situation. So let's say one roommate says, oh, I can't raise the rent at all. You know, I can't pay more, etc. That's their, and then the other person is like, well, but I need it, you know, I wanted to pay 100 less, so I wanted you to pay 100 more. How the person could approach it is they could say, the person who wanted the person to pay more, they come in and say, hey, so I completely understand why you don't want to increase your rent. You know, maybe you have certain situations. So I think all of our needs within this household matter. All of our feelings should be validated. So I think maybe we can come to an agreement. How about, you know, you and the other roommate maybe pay $30 more. That way, you know, it's a very, very light increase for you. And then I'm also, you know, getting it a little bit lowered. So we're both kind of getting our needs met a little bit. We're meeting in the middle. And that's how an assertive person would handle that situation, because you're respecting them. You're not coming in there and like, how dare you? How dare you talk to me that way? And it's just not getting crazy, right? So, you know, so that's an example. Assertive people also take responsibility for their actions. They are direct, and when they go and communicate with someone, they're not fearing rejection. They're okay with the possibility of rejection. They know when they go in, they can't change the other person's opinion. There's no manipulation. They're not, no. I'm going in, I'm going to be assertive, let the chips fall where they may. And, you know, so essentially no expectations when they go in. And they're respecting the other person because they're not trying to like underhandingly or aggressively get anything from that person. They're not forcing it. They're not trying to control. Another important thing is I statements. You know, let's say you get into a fight, someone say something messed up. And so you want to talk about it later, you know, say, hey, I felt really judged and really hurt when you said that to me. I really, you know, I value this friendship, and so it was really like, it was very difficult for me when, you know, I heard that. So please in the future, you know, speak to me with more respect. Speak to me just plain respectively. Tell me what you want. Tell me what you need. Don't disrespect me to try and hurt me. That's not going to help. You know, because we started with the I statement in the beginning, and then the kind of like you statement at the end. That was okay, and that was important because it's essentially still an I statement because you're trying to teach the other person how to treat you. You're saying, hey, maybe we can approach it this way next time, or this is my bad, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and assertive people, they also put themselves in other people's shoes. So, kind of going down the list, a passive person, maybe for them, and for them, they're people pleasers. So they have to be very careful when doing this, but if done kind of the healthy way, a healthy way to do it would be to tell themselves, okay, you know what, imagine if I was in that person's shoes and they had no idea that I was having all this resentment and that my boundaries are being crossed. I'm not even communicating what boundaries are. So how can I be resentful when I'm not even advocating for myself and letting them know? You know, that's one way to do it. Another important thing is don't sugarcoat, you know, because for passive people, they want to avoid conflict, make it, no. Say, hey, I felt disrespected, or hey, I want to do this, or, whatever. So I think that's a really important one for passive. And then another thing is ask what that person thinks. Get their side. Like, remember the roommate situation. However, once again, with passive, they got to be careful with that because they can't take what that person thinks and then make it so that their personal needs don't matter. The passive's personal feelings don't matter. They gotta, so, maybe when they're first starting their recovery, first starting to change communication styles, maybe they gotta either stay away from that or keep a really good handle, whatever works best for you. It's also really important, like I also feel like maybe for passive, it depends on the person, but maybe they have trouble accepting criticism. That's why they want to avoid conflict. Maybe they're very sensitive and it hurts. So just kind of developing that ego strength, kind of developing, the idea in your head of, hey, I'm not perfect. My ass stinks just like everybody else. My shit stinks just like everybody else. So, because none of us are perfect. And, when you accept criticism, constructive criticism, if someone's coming at you aggressively, stop, either speak to me with respect or we're not going to talk. But yeah, so with passive aggressive, it's the same kind of deal in terms of communicate your needs. That way you're not resentful and rolling your eyes and et cetera, et cetera. And it might feel really scary at first, what's going to happen when I do this? But you know what, like I said, you're going to upset people and piss people off more if you go passive aggressive, most likely. It's not going to get you what you want. So I statements and just really putting yourself out there. Putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Hey, a passive aggressive person, I'm sure they don't want, or whenever another passive aggressive person comes in, I'm sure they don't like it. There's not this whole thing of like, oh, we're both passive aggressive, let's just do. No, it probably would bug them. So, so empathy, that kind of thing. Once again, accepting criticism. Maybe sometimes people are passive aggressive because they're concerned about rejection. They're concerned about what the person's going to say. If they are assertive, no expectations. You just got to go and chips fall where they may. That's a good saying. And then asking what the other person thinks, because that's just another way to build up that repertoire so that the other person feels respected and heard and not stomped over, et cetera, et cetera. So keep it moving. Economy of motion. Aggressive. So in this case, putting yourself in another person's shoes is going to be key. because no one wants to be disrespected and coming out all crazy and et cetera, et cetera. So in this one, utilizing empathy is going to be really important. And what's the motivation? Better relationships, getting more of what you want, not taking advantage of people, which are all really, really good things. So that's going to be a really good tool. Asking what the other person thinks, not making it all about yourself. You know, trying to figure out how you can come to a compromise. Or, you know, I mean, maybe if that person, the other person has unrealistic ideas about what they want to do, or just stuff that's impractical, it's not going to make sense, but at least you talked about it. And at least you explain, hey, but I don't think this will work because of X, Y, Z. And you're not doing it in a selfish way. It's because you really think that overall it's just not going to be helpful. So the other thing is accepting criticism. You know, who knows? Maybe people who are aggressive, maybe it's also a defense mechanism, so they don't have to look at the other person's needs, because if they look at the other person's needs, maybe the other person wants them to stop something. So, you know, if I come at you all hard, then that's my protection. And, you know, it's a possibility. And then, yeah, so for that one, it's just going to really be important to ask what the other person thinks and put themselves in the other person's shoes. Obviously, any of the tools, you know, if you figure out what works for you, what do I know? You know yourself. And another thing too with aggressive is I statements. That way, you know, because with aggressive, a lot of the time they're like, oh, you did this and you did this to me, and et cetera, et cetera. And that's just not going to be helpful. So yeah, so that's for aggressive. Now, manipulative. This is once again a thing where putting yourself in the other person's shoes is going to be the key. It's a pinnacle role here, because nobody wants to be manipulated. Nobody wants to be taken advantage of. And so if you imagine how that could affect you, and you can get yourself to have that empathy, because maybe, and I'm not saying I know for sure, but it's possible that some people who have the manipulative style, it's hard for them to have empathy. But, you know, I think that it's possible if you worked enough on it and you put in and you were dedicated to it, because it's going to lead to better relationships. That's the motivator, that maybe you can get yourself to experience more empathy. There's all types of theories out there. Like there's there's theories about an empathy switch. And I can get into all that later in a different video. But point is, trying to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Don't sugarcoat. That can be an important one, because sometimes a manipulative person will sugarcoat in order to try and get what they want, do an underlying, you know, kind of thing. Underhanded. You know, accepting criticism is going to be important here too, because it's possible that they don't want to, that they haven't worked on it, maybe because they don't want to look at that part of themselves. They don't, you know, they may manipulate as a way to avoid having to look at any of their stuff, you know. And I mean, and they're really not looking at their stuff. I mean, I'm sure with a lot of cases they're not looking at their stuff, because I think if you were looking at what you were doing, it would be harder for you to manipulate. And then taking responsibility for their actions, you know, that's part of assertive. That is going to be really, really important for the manipulative type, because you got to own it. If you're taking advantage of people, you're doing this effed up stuff, you got to say, oh my God, I need to take an inventory. This is a character defect of mine. I got to look within myself. So that's going to be really important. And I think with a manipulative person, it might be easier for them. I don't want to make assumptions, but it could possibly be easier for them to know their limits and to use boundaries. But, you know, nevertheless, hey, maybe they have difficulty with boundaries. That's why they do underhanded. Who knows? Like I said, you guys know yourselves better than me, so you know what's going to work for you. You know your defects of character, and you know your strengths. Um, so so yeah, it's communication. Like I said, it's gonna affect you in all areas of your life. Communication, it's, imagine if somebody's just going to go and talk about someone instead of to someone. And imagine if you talked to that person, you could have gotten the whole thing resolved. You would be happier, they would be aware, et cetera, et cetera. It's just, if you can do assertive communication, you're going to have people a lot happier with you. And it's not about pleasing them, it's about making it so it's productive. I mean, obviously we want to have empathy for people, but we don't want to be doing it to, just where we're taking away our needs and just, no, that's not what we're doing here. It's to be constructive and productive, improve relationships. Because I mean, I think with a lot of relationships, maybe if there's constant fights, if there's this, the issue just could be a breakdown in communication. And so imagine if you were able to fix or save that relationship. That would be awesome. So, yeah, so that's all I have today about communication styles. Once again, with all my videos, I say if you have any questions or you have any things to add, because I don't know everything, I'm just presenting information that I think is important and kind of what I know about it. If you know anything else, let me know. So, we can build knowledge, and maybe I can even do videos where I credit you, obviously, so and so told me, and this is something I want to add, whatever, whatever. Because I'm here to help you guys. Whatever I can do to, help you guys improve your life. I mean, obviously, I'm not a messiah, but, I'm going to do the best I can. And like I said, I have empathy for people who are struggling, for people with communication styles. Like I said, I'm not judging. All what I think is, hey, let's just move forward and get better. Let's not focus on, I mean, we need to take responsibility for our actions, but don't ruminate. What can we do to get this train going, Okay. If you like this video, please like it electronically. If you want, I'm not going to try and control anyone. Or, and or subscribe. Okay, bye.